Hey everyone, welcome back to our John study. This is our second to last day. My name is Trey Stewart. I am a student at Clemson and have been with Clemson Navigators for several years. And today we're talking about John 21, 1 through 14. And so in this passage is after all of the events of the time in Jerusalem, the events of the upper room, the Garden of Gethsemane, the crucifixion of Jesus, the 3 days of mourning and angst and hiding, the sudden surprising resurrection, even though it was foretold, but that's okay. And then the appearances of Christ. And all of this has been happening over the last very short amount of time. And I can imagine the disciples are emotionally frazzled, to say the least. And so 7 of them, including John and Peter, are like, well, let's go back to what we know best, fishing. And it was before I did this, I earned a living fishing, so let's go do that, I guess. And so they return to their old stomping grounds to start up the fishing business again. But Jesus is going to interrupt their return to normalcy with a miracle. And so they are working all night, sweating, struggling through, and getting nothing out of it, which as a college student, I can empathize with. Sometimes thorns and thistles, baby, as Genesis 3 talks about, work can be unproductive. And so they're working, and nothing's happening. And then in the morning, Jesus shows up and is going to work a miracle and allow them to have this incredible catch. But a principle I thought that applies to our lives is that even though Jesus is going to choose to give them this miracle, he does it through their work. First, he allows them to work all night fruitlessly, and allows his disciples to struggle through that. And then when he grants this miracle through their faith, because he says, throw it on the right side, after you've just thrown it on the left side and didn't get anything, what's the difference of 10, 15 feet over into the lake going to do? But that's what he says, and so that's what they do, relying on faith. And they pull up this enormous catch, but they still have to haul it back to shore and still have to count it. And so this miracle still coming through effort. And even though the effort was never enough, clearly they had been working all night and it was never enough, it was only granted by God. There is still an effort required of the disciples to seize hold of it. And so then they pull up this catch, and it finally clicks in John's mind, and he goes, oh, that guy on the beach who's yelling at us, it's the Lord. And so I thought another principle that was very interesting is that John had spent enough time with Jesus that he knows who Jesus is. He has heard Jesus, like the guy says a few things, and then by his miraculous divine power, so by his words and by his actions, John knows that this is the Lord. And as the scriptures say later, the sheep know the shepherd's voice, and that as his sheep and as his disciples, we know Jesus when he talks to us. And so this is the relationship that John has, where he knows that this is Jesus straight off. Then Peter puts his shirt on, jumps into the lake, and swims the rest of the way to shore, leaving all his buddies to drag the boat in themselves. So good job there, Peter. Now we see Jesus continuing one of the great activities of his ministry in dining with sinners. And he is once again going to dine with people who are in need of grace and in need of direction. We also get to see through this meal that Jesus is human. He eats. This is not a ghost or a spirit, but this is a restored humanity. He eats like Adam ate before the fall. He is the restored creation. This is resurrection body and resurrection life. And so as believers, this is the model that we look forward to. This is the second Adam. And then the final principle that I kind of got out of this for our lives is that Peter pushes into this relationship with Jesus. I don't know how much the events of his 3-time denial of Jesus were weighing on his mind and his heart in the moment. Um, but even with the anxiety and fear of having failed, and struggling with those feelings of failure and betrayal, um, and towards the Lord, he still runs to Jesus instead of running away. He very easily could have gotten in the boat and been like, "Nope, we're rowing to another shore. We're not going over there." But he gets out and he swims towards Jesus, and he trusts that the Jesus who so kindly and lovingly and gently restored and healed others, will continue to restore and heal him. Um, and so I think that's important for us as believers when we sin. The devil always wants to tempt us and pull us away from God and use that as a wedge to drive between us. But instead, we see the example is to push into a relationship with Jesus and to receive the healing that he knows that we need, and that he came to give. And so those are my thoughts on John, the first half of John 21. And so we will see you back tomorrow for the second half.